so much. Very excited to be here. I'm Julia Wilk. My business is called Word and Web. I'm a web designer and digital marketer. I do more the development side and also the marketing side. I actually have a graphic designer that I work with and a content writer as well for website builds, but I do a lot of Facebook ads. Oh my goodness, my cat's gonna be acting up today, sorry. Facebook ads, Google ads, tech support for websites, and I do a lot of work with Squarespace and WooCommerce, WordPress, and e-commerce. Basically whatever platform you might have. I like to come in with existing websites and fix what's broken rather than, you know, a lot of folks would prefer to start from scratch, but I like problem solving. There is another part to this workshop tomorrow. We're going to talk about promoting the website. This is a common, you know, mistake I'd say, is people focus a little bit too much on the website itself and they don't make a plan for how to get people to go there, or they don't leave budget for that. So both are important. We're going to talk about user experience and conversion rate optimization a lot today because I just see that folks are on a lot of different platforms and most people already have websites. Most people in this webinar. And so these are the two, I mean, this and SEO, which we'll talk about tomorrow, are sort of like the holy trinity of, yeah, well, we'll get to it later. Well, it's very important aspects of a website, and it's not specific to a platform. It's just kind of a overall quality type thing. Does anybody have specific questions, burning questions? I know I talked about Facebook ads with Royal, but anything that in this webinar you like, I really want to get this burning question answered? I'll leave a couple seconds. Otherwise, I will follow my presentation. No? Okay, amazing. We will have time for questions at the end then. So, did we have somebody saying something in the chat? Other than Facebook?
Leslie popped in. She said, other than Facebook, how do we market? So that's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
Definitely something. I'm going to go through all of that stuff tomorrow. But just to give you a really quick overview, there's both organic social media, there's paid social media, there's paid per click advertising on Google, Bing, Amazon if you do a product. SEO can be organic, you know, search engine work to help you come up higher in search. There are many streams, ways to promote yourself. Podcasting, YouTubing, figuring out which one is the most effective for your business is important challenge, but that's what tomorrow will be all about. So thank you for that question. So choosing a platform, this could be a whole presentation in itself, but since most of you already have websites, I thought we would just go over it briefly. It is a really important decision. I would say it's worth stopping and taking your time with this choice, but at the same time, I sometimes see people get caught up here and feeling like the platform is going to be the be all end all, and it's not really. It helps to ask questions or do research, but realistically, you're probably going to redesign like every 3 or 5 years. You don't have to do that, but you're not locked into a certain platform just because you choose it the first time. And, you know, they all have their advantages and disadvantages. None of them are going to be like so horrible. Otherwise, they would not be around still. They're businesses themselves. And the exception is if you have an online business. If you have an online business, I would spend more time on this question. For example, if you're 100% e-commerce, or if you are a blogger, or, you know, if the website is your business, then yes, take more time. But if you have a restaurant, if you have a retail shop, you know, and at some point you find, you know, don't try to pick a platform for the next 10 years. Just try to pick a platform for the next 3 years. And hopefully you'll stick with it. But if you have to change, it's not a big deal. And I find people falling into this trap a lot where they think that they need a new website. And then they come talk to me and we're talking about why they need a new website. And none of the things that they're struggling with really have anything to do with the website itself. It's just a really hard mental thing, I think, where people feel that if the website is not, if the framework is not perfect, then that's what's preventing them from putting in good writing, good photography, good, just good content and updating it regularly. And I've seen time and time again that that's just not it. And this is a little bit of like a motivational psychology kind of, I'm not a business coach, but I do see a pattern. You know, I made a website once for somebody who was a cartoonist, and we just, you know, this person has redesigned, you know, we've talked about redesigning the website so many times. We did so much work on it, and it's been years. He's put up like 3 comics, and I see everybody doing that. And sometimes they recognize it, but just don't fall into that trap. Are you using the platform to its fullest potential? Have you learned how to use it? Have you explored? Have you really come up against walls where the platform just says, you can't do that with our platform? And if you haven't come up against those walls, then just stick with what you've got, because you're going to spin your wheels forever. It's hard to see the chat while I'm, other than questions to ask when finding someone to design your website, and what about pricing? How much do we budget? I'm going to come back around to this during the question and answer, because this is a great question. Remind me. Great. So I brought up at the beginning UX and CRO and SEO. Lots of letters. What it stands for, this is kind of, like I said, this holy trinity that they work together. They're not independent, but this is kind of a qualitative way of evaluating your website. User experience is UX stands for user experience. How pleasant and easy is it to use your website? We're going to go into this in detail, in very much detail. CRO is conversion rate optimization. So how many people that land on your website actually become customers? Like how good at converting people into customers is your website? And if you can, you know, improve this part, that means that for every, you know, 100 people that see your website, more of those people are going to become customers. And depending on your business, I'm sure most of you know, like sometimes one customer could mean a lot of money if it's a good customer. So this can really help your bottom line a lot. And SEO, search engine optimization, which we are going to talk about in part 2, because that mostly happens off your website, or it's in the domain of getting people to your website rather than dealing with them once they get there. So I'm going to start with user experience. And my little tagline, going back. My little tagline is, you notice it when it's not there. I'm sure everybody here has encountered websites with bad user experience, and it drives you crazy, right? People can relate to that. It's like you're trying to click the button to see the hours, or click the button to call, and that's all you came there for, and somehow it's like taking you, 60 seconds to do something that should take 1 second. Somebody, Peter Morville, who I don't know who that is, but someone came up with this really great graphic, this honeycomb, which kind of describes what all the different facets of user experience are. And there's a lot of information here, and I'm going to have to kind of like go through it quick, but please feel free to come back and spend a little bit more time reading through this, the little bullet points I've given. I want to emphasize low-hanging fruit. So when we're improving websites, it's really nice to try to figure out what are the things that are easiest to fix that have the most impact. So it can be overwhelming. There's so many different things that you could test and that you could work on, but try to figure out, like, are there some really obvious things that are standing in your way? And if so, work on those first. So useful is the first one. Does your website offer any value? Is it something new and unique, or is it just, rehashing stuff that can be found elsewhere on the internet? I know that that's intimidating because there's so much information on the internet, but if this is specific information about your business, that's valuable for anybody who lives in your area and might be considering eating at your restaurant, for example. You are the authority on your own business. So you do have valuable and unique information to share, and make sure that you're sharing it. That's all I have to say about that. But yeah, think about offering value. Usability, how easy is it to use? Does it change sizes on different screens so that it's easy to read? Does the text run off the screen? Sometimes that happens. Big problem. Also, is the text tiny on a mobile screen? Can people read it on all screens? Do all the links work? Do they go to a logical place? Or do you have links that are going back to the home page when people are trying to go somewhere else? Are you asking your users to make a lot of decisions? That can be frustrating. Does it load quickly? That's a big one. That will affect your SEO as well. And that's why, all of these things are connected. Oops. Findable, speaking of SEO, getting people to your website is one part of SEO, but the findable part of the honeycomb can also just be about how your website is organized. Do you have a straightforward navigation? Is it easy to guess where you're going to go from each link? I get into this with people sometimes where there's like links in the navigation that it kind of sounds all the same. And you're like, well, what's the difference between dinner party and dinner service? And then they go to the same place or something like that. And it can be, it shouldn't be confusing. It should be predictable. Internal linking should lead to the core content. So we'll talk about this a little bit with the CRO, but you should have a sense of what your most important pages are. If your goal is to get reservations for your inn, the page where people make reservations is your most important page. And you need to make sure that there are plenty of paths that end there. So if there's only one way for someone to get there and they have to go through several links, that's not too good. So internal linking really helps that. A suggestion of how to work on this on your own website is find a friend and sit them down with your website on their phone or on your computer, preferably, do it multiple times with both, and just say, ask them a question about your business. How does someone place an order, or what's our phone number, or what are our business hours, something like that, and set them loose and see how long it takes them to find this like vital information. Preferably it'll be like right away, but you can also ask more detailed questions like how long have we been in business, or what is our policy about X. And if they're clicking back and forth to the same pages over and over in like a spiral, it happens sometimes. If they're getting lost, then that will help you to evaluate whether your navigation is predictable and easy to use. Oh my God, what a cute kitten. Loving it. Okay, credibility. Who the heck are you and why should we listen to you? If you're blogging about tourism in your area, it's important to have, if you can have a picture of yourself, that's great, but a professional looking picture. But especially just, so-and-so has lived in Wilmington for so many years, has been in the hospitality industry for this many years, has been on the board of this, committee, etc. Establishing your credibility is very, very important and valuable on the internet, because anybody can put something on the internet, and giving it a face is going to really help. We'll talk about that a little bit in the desirable honeycomb. and impeccable presentation inspires trust. If things look presentable and if there's no typos and things like that, that also establishes credibility and helps people feel like they can trust what you're saying and that the information they're getting is valuable and correct. Accessibility is super important. This is mostly for folks with disabilities. You want to put your alt text on your pictures so that folks who can't see pictures can know what's in the pictures. Similarly, if you have an audio file embedded, you want to have a text version of that as well, because some folks can't hear, it turns out. Color blindness, I'm colorblind very slightly, but if there's something that requires seeing color in order to really understand the meaning, consider changing that. Or, you know, if you have colors next to each other, like red and green are next to each other, that can be really abrasive. Text size, as folks get older, their eyes are, I'm sure some folks can understand, relate to this, but if your text is tiny, it can be a problem for people who don't have as good eyesight. Desirable. This is more the content writing and the branding side of your website, but it's very important. It's, you know, does your website tell a story? Does it speak to the user? Does it evoke an emotion? It doesn't even have to, you know, I'm not talking about like a schmaltzy, like Hollywood kind of emotion, but, you know, if you're a hotel showing pictures of people enjoying the hotel, you know, the owners of the hotel, some special vignettes and special moments that are happening at the hotel rather than just like a floor plan kind of thing that's very, you know, showing a human experience is always gonna be helpful. Cats, my goodness. All right, and of course, valuable is the center of the honeycomb. Does this website further your business goals? Does it actually lead to sales? Does it accomplish what it sets out to do? Does it build relationships with your customers or save you time? Oops. And here are some, so that's the end of, we did the whole tour of the user experience section, and some free tools that you can use that I use a lot when working on improving your user experience. Hotjar, they have a free plan, and basically this will kind of give you a bunch of tools to observe how people are using your website. So one thing they have is a heat map. So you hit go and you come back 7 days later and it's like, it'll show you your homepage and where people are clicking and how far people are scrolling. It's pretty cool, actually. So if you see, you know, you come back and you see that like the majority of people are clicking this one link, but actually that link is broken, or actually that's not the link that you're trying to get people to click, then that helps. You can also have, like they do an anonymized video recordings of users actually using your website. And it seems a little creepy, but I have found such good insights from that. I think Meg was talking about earlier. I was watching one of my own website and I saw that this page I thought was hidden was not hidden. And I was watching someone like get, you know, scrolling and I was like, oh my God, I never would have figured it out. I mean, there's other ways to figure it out, but I never would have noticed that was still there. And similarly, another client, I was watching videos and I was seeing like all these random characters that were in some product page that wasn't even on my radar because there were so many pages, and it's just like surprised. So this is a very cool tool. Google Search Console it's an SEO tool, but one thing that's cool about it is that it will send you emails whenever they detect a potential user experience problem, because user experience does affect your SEO. So they'll send you a thing saying, you know, the buttons on this page on mobile are too close together, that people's fingers are too, you know, too wide to push them. Or, you know, your text is running off the screen. And they'll send you these alerts to say, hey, you have something you could fix that we're picking up on. Browser Stack is it's a little bit more annoying to get in there, but there is a free, they do have a free plan, and it's like sort of like a library of devices, and you can look at your website on an Android or on a Pixel or on a, you know, Mac if you don't have a Mac. So it's a nice, I use it for testing, but you can see if your website looks good on all kinds of devices. And Page Speed Insights will give you a score on how fast your website is. It's pretty important. Does anyone have questions about user experience? Am I going too fast, too slow?
I actually have a question. So I'm interested in all those, like those testing things. What do you think is, like, where would you start and how easy is it to sign up for that? You know, if you were to go to Hotjar, is that something like really simple, or is that like I need to set aside an hour to do that? Is that, you know, that's my question. Just like,
yeah.
That to use.
I think that Hotjar and Search Console take a little bit more time setting up. The other two, not as much, but Search Console, I would say, I would really recommend that everybody sets Google Analytics and Google Search Console. I always recommend people set those up right away because they gather data about your website. And maybe right now you're not like obsessive about your website, but if you'll be able to, like, if 5 years from now you want to evaluate how your website's doing and you want to be able to look back on 5 years of data, that's really helpful. It helps you see a trend because there's always, you know, a lot of ups and downs, and the longer you can be collecting information about your website, I feel like the better. You only have to do it one time. Well, one time unless you change platforms, but I really like it. It's very helpful. Page Speed Insights is really quick. You just, you know, it'll just give you a score really quickly, and the suggestions they give you on how to improve your speed, like, just don't look at those because they're all very technical and not really, you know, applicable. But it will let you know if you have a big problem with mobile speed tends to be the big one. So yeah, good question. All right, moving on to the concept of conversion rate optimization. So what are you trying to accomplish, and could it be better? Could you be achieving that better, more? This depends on your business. You want to figure out what a conversion is for you. For me, it would be somebody filling out a form on my website or booking a consultation with me. That would be called like a lead. If you sell a product online, it would be sales, of course. If you're a blogger and you're selling advertising, then just spending time on your site, that's basically the conversion that you're looking for. Sometimes it can be hard to track the conversions if you are making the sale in person. So the evaluation part, the measurement part is tricky in that case. Like for a restaurant, probably, sometimes people would use a click to call. So if somebody calls the restaurant, that's like a lead, basically. And it's not the full picture, but it does help measure how well you're doing. Again, Google Analytics being set up is really helpful. That's the one I was just mentioning, Google Search and Google Analytics. It will give you the data. So the conversions, like the number of times people clicked to call, for example, or filled out a form, over the number of unique users, that's going to be your conversion rate. So out of every 100 users, 3 of them called you. That would be a 3% conversion rate. And also just we'll talk about it tomorrow, but just want to invite you to consider that there could be an overall conversion rate. So out of all the users that come to your site, how many call? But there could also be something like stream specific. So out of all the people that came to your website after searching on Google, how many people turned into customers? Or how many people came from your Facebook ads, landed on your website, and then became customers? How many from Google ads? How many from, direct, how many from a certain link from a certain blog, and this is one way that you can really evaluate whether your marketing is working and like what marketing methods are working for you. It's really great to have that data, and it really depends. It relies on you setting up Google Analytics most of the time. If you have one of the DIY editor websites like Squarespace or Wix or any of those, Weebly, often they have a built-in analytics, but it just will never be as detailed as Google Analytics. So, depending on how advanced you want to get, consider, doesn't cost anything to set up Google Analytics.
Can I jump in with another question?
Sure.
This is nitty gritty. So nitty gritty is, how do you set up Google Analytics? Like, where do you go? How do you do it? Like, literally, like, lead us through that process really quick.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Google Analytics, you're going to need a Google account. It could be a Gmail account. You could just make a new one if you want, say mountaineerinmarketing@gmail.com if you don't want to use your regular one. And just Google Analytics. We're just typing, I think it's analytics.google.com, and there'll be a big button like start here or something, and you'll want to be signed in, or it'll prompt you to sign in. Something that a trap that people sometimes get into is they're in the background signed into their personal Gmail or something like that, and it'll just automatically use that as the account. So I believe there are several ways they give you an option. They give you a couple options, but generally you can either embed a certain piece of code into the header of your website, or you can go to the DNS records on your domain. So usually the code is easier, and you probably want to search how to set up Google Analytics on Squarespace or on Weebly or Wix or something, because generally there's just like an area in the settings where there's a little box and you copy it over. So it shouldn't be too complicated, but it does require following instructions in a tutorial or something. If anybody wants me to find this tutorial for your platform, then feel free to just shoot me a message at the end. Yeah, it's slightly technical, but it's also only a one-time thing that you have to do that, and it's not too tricky. So how do you know when you're completely optimized, or how do you know whether this is something you should be worried about, right? The benchmark overall for e-commerce, I think it's actually pretty similar for all websites as a whole, although I think e-commerce is the most easy category to define the conversion. But it's around 3%. So I would just take that as a point of reference. Like for an e-commerce website, typically like every 3 out of 100 people actually buy something. I would highly recommend asking, if you have a business coach or if you have friends in the same industry, like ask them, how are you doing? Because regionally it will be different, price point it will be different. Of course, if you're selling something for $10 versus $100, you're going to have more people, the more sales for the $10 item. Of course, you're making less money. Selectiveness, you may not want, especially with web designers, I hear this, when people are advising me on my business, it's like, sometimes you want to screen out some of the customers that might be sending in lead forms, because they might not be right for your business, and it just takes up a lot of time to be answering inquiries all the time. So a higher number isn't always better. It also, quality is important. Quality leads are just as important as quantity leads. And also, of course, your area, if you're a local business and the low population versus like a high population, that can affect your rate as well. So try to figure out for yourself what, where you've been at, where you'd like to go. I think, sometimes websites can get up to like 10%, or I think like 2 to 5 is kind of typical. So going straight to how to actually change this number. It's nice to be able to measure it. It's nice to be able to know it's important, but how do you do something about it? First of all, where is it that the conversions happen? Remember that game where you set your friend loose on your website and ask them to get to the important part? So if the conversion, if it's a lead form, make sure that there is a journey that leads there, that ends there. And I am going to talk about a sales funnel in part 2. I don't know if people are familiar with this concept of the sales funnel, but it is important. If you kind of think of the top of the funnel, like if you think of your customers going down this funnel, so the top of the funnel is like brand awareness. That's like everybody who knows about your business, like just knows it exists. And then the next step down is kind of like they know it exists and they actually know some details and they're kind of considering, buying from your business. And then, as they get closer and closer, the more experience they have with your business, the more likely they are to actually buy from you. You've kind of built a relationship with them. And this is important to consider because you don't want to you're not going to have a good rate of conversion by going for the sale with somebody you just met. It's like if you walk up to somebody on the street and you're like, would you like to buy this sandwich? And they don't know you. They've never heard of you before. They're like, that sandwich, that seems sketchy. How many people would actually buy the sandwich? Whereas in the funnel model, you might walk up to someone on the street and say, hey, I'm Julia. I just opened a sandwich shop down the road. You should come by sometime. It's right over there. And then, the next day you run into them again. Hey, good to see you again. I have that sandwich shop still and we're having a special on Italian subs. You should come by. And then like the next day you're like, and here's a coupon. And then like the next day you're like, hey, you want to buy this sandwich? So basically, if you're bringing somebody in and they're just brand new to your site and they click the link, you don't want to be like, sign up now. You don't want to do that because it's too soon. You want to make a case for why they should sign up first. And that's part of the art of it is people are coming to your website through all different kinds of ways. What page are they running into first? That's called the landing page. And then where is the conversion in relation to that? So it's a whole art. There's not like a specific formula, but just consider this. Try to think about this. And some other common sales techniques that are in-person sales techniques, but you can apply them to the digital world in really obvious ways. I'll talk about in a second, but social proof and creating a feeling of urgency. So social proof in the real world would be something like you own a restaurant and there are tables by the window and you seat people at the tables by the window first so that people walking by kind of get the impression that there's people inside the restaurant. That creates, a feeling like, oh, it's a popular restaurant, must be good. Whereas if you seat them way in the back, it kind of looks like the restaurant's empty all the time, and that doesn't inspire confidence. Similarly, having product reviews on your site or having testimonials, case studies, this is a way of, reassuring people that there are, in fact, customers at my business, and they are willing to say something nice about me or say something nice about this product. Same concept. Similarly, creating urgency, like a flash sale and a sale's only happening for one day, we see this a lot on websites. Sometimes it's even built into your platform. It'll be like, there's only one of these items left. There's only 3 of these items left, there's only like a countdown thing that the sale's only going on for the next 24 hours or something like that. Sometimes it can be overkill. If you guys ever have one of those, like, this sale's only happening for 2 hours, and then you come back like the next day and the same sale's happening. I hate that, but you can still use the idea of urgency to your advantage because it certainly does drive decision making and action, especially in a digital world where everybody's kind of inundated all the time with distractions. So if they don't feel like there's urgency, sometimes it can be hard to make a decision. So those are a few ways to affect your conversion rate. Again, for some tools, I would use Google Analytics. I would use Hotjar again. Hotjar is going to have a similar kind of setup, to speak to Meg's question, with, you know, putting a little piece of code on your website. It's probably going to be the exact same, if I remember correctly, the same process as for Google Analytics, and Search Console will be the same. Google Optimize is a little bit more complicated, but it's a very cool tool, and it's free. And it basically allows you to, you put in your website, let's say you put your homepage in, and it allows you to make edits to your website. The only problem is that it doesn't really give you like a, as far as I remember, like a drag and drop builder to do it. So you do have to know a little bit of coding or a little bit of something to make edits, but it'll allow you to make a copy of your homepage, for example, where you make a few changes. You change the picture, or you change the color of a button, or you change the order of things on your page. And it'll run a test where you have the two home pages side by side. And if you have your analytics set up with your conversions tracked, it can be a little bit complicated, but if you can get there, it'll allow you to do all kinds of testing of, well, which version of my homepage led to the most people calling me, or the most lead submit, you know, form submissions, or whatever thing, or the most sales. You know, it's really helpful for e-commerce. That's what I mostly use it for, but it's just cool. There are tons of free tools that, if you can learn how to use them, Hotjar is, I would say, more approachable and more fun, because you get to like watch people use your website, or you get to see like this cool heat map. But yeah, these are there for you to use. And now that's all I got. We have question time. I guess I'll click to my info while we chat, so that if people want to write it down or anything, they can. Does anyone have any? Oh, we had a question earlier. Let me pull it up really quick. So, are there any questions to ask when finding someone to design your website? What about pricing, and how much should we budget? This is a really good question. It's really hard to ever say what at one price that, you know, you should pay for a website, because it does depend on the region, it depends on your business. But I would, firstly, I would kind of recommend considering what your web designer, a potential web designer's career goals are. I find often when folks are looking for a low cost website, they will end up with a web designer who is sort of dabbling, which is not bad. You know, you can get a cheaper website that way because the person doesn't have as much experience, or this is like a side thing. But just know that they may get a job somewhere else and disappear, and it might not be a long-term relationship. So I would ask, is this your full-time career into the career plan for the future, or are you kind of coming in and out? I've been told that, you know, standard website generally I'm in the central Vermont, Northeast Kingdom area. I've been told that 5,000 is pretty standard for a website, maybe with WordPress or something like that. I have seen that a lot of web designers that are more established will like start at 5,000. But I also know that if you're building with one of the DIY editors and you want to hire a designer to do that, it is much cheaper. So if it's a Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, that's what I mean by the DIY. I'm trying to think if there's any I'm leaving out. I wouldn't put Shopify in that category, even though, you know, you can kind of set it up pretty quickly. But with the drag and drop ones where the hosting is all included, and it's really intended for an end user, not a designer, often you can do that for $500 or something. I've even done them for less if it's just like a really quick one page kind of temporary thing, or just very simple. So it really depends. I would figure out how much you can spend and then speak with somebody and try to just bring your scope down. A website doesn't have to be super complicated. And you can shop around, but maybe consider the experience level as well. And does that answer your question?
Well, yes and no. What about if I'm an artist, and a lot of times people want to see the art on their wall or in the room. So that's a complicated thing, I'm assuming. Is there something specific I should be asking for with that? I mean, that's probably more important than anything else for my business.
So they want to see. Tell me more. So what would it look like on a website?
So there is a web designer called Art Storefronts, and they'll create your website for you. They'll do all the commerce area. They'll do that for $5,000. But this particular thing is, you get a screenshot of your living room. It's like with the paint stores do that. You can see your room. So that way they get to live with it a little bit before it actually comes through the door.
Mm-hmm. So it's like they take a picture of their room and then you can like place the painting in it?
Yep.
And this is a service provided by the Art Storefront?
Yep, the Art Storefront. But in return for the complicated things that they do, they not only want a fee up front, but they also want a percentage of every art piece that you sell. Oh. So now you're going into an entirely different relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, how complicated is that to do? Is that a huge complicated thing or no?
It's complicated.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's a nice feature. And I think unless you're selling a lot of art, you don't 100% need it. So if you want to go for it, I think you want to see that it's going to make a big difference in how many paintings you sell. To
okay.
Make it worthwhile. Yeah. But it's complicated to just create that thing. They probably spent a bunch of money creating that program, and then they sell it to everybody, and that's how their business model works. Yeah, that's cool. I haven't heard about that. I've heard about more like futuristic, like virtual reality things, where you can like put you got your virtual reality headset on, and you like can put the dog bed in the corner of where you can like
oh, okay.
product like in your house, but through virtual reality or something. I mean, that's something I've just heard of. I've never actually encountered it. But yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. Art Storefronts. All right, I'll check that out. Thanks for that question. Does anyone have other questions?
I think that the thing that happens to a lot of people is, you want to be able to change your websites. You don't want to necessarily have to call a web designer every time you're like, I need to put the sale in. Or so I think that's a question is a lot of people are, even if you have a web designer design your site, do you feel like it's good for most small businesses to use a drag and drop service so that somebody can basically set up the basic framework and the menu buttons and all that stuff, but then it allows them to make changes? Or do you find it's better to have somebody kind of retained who can help you do that stuff forever and ever, and rather than doing it yourself? Or is there a hybrid middle point that you find works really well for a lot of small businesses, of like how much help do you get from your designer and how much do you do yourself?
Yeah, I think that if you have e-commerce, active e-commerce, you'll want to have a designer or a developer, whatever, somebody helping you. But even the sites I build that aren't with those DIY editors, usually I make a tutorial anyway. Like WordPress still has, it's still pretty easy to use if you're just changing text. Mainly the issue comes with the layout. If you want to like move pictures around, move things around, make text much longer than it was originally, put different headlines and stuff, that's when, you know, I really would just, it depends on how much you use your website, but honestly, if you're only going in a few times, you know, maybe once a month or something, the learning curve can be irritating. And especially if sometimes you don't touch it for 6 months, then you just forget everything. And if it's really a simple fix, then it'll only take the web designer like, you know, a couple minutes. It really just depends on how much you have on your plate and whether you're interested and whether you're tech savvy. Do you find it easy to figure out software stuff? This is another plug for not changing your platform a million times if you can avoid it. But yeah, I think that blog posts are always easy to, you know, you don't have to change the layout of your homepage to keep your site updated. You can keep putting blog posts up, for example. And that is like a typical way of keeping things up to date without, you know, you shouldn't need your web designer to help you with that. But yeah, it really just depends on the people. Some people really just struggle so much with doing anything, and if it's a huge headache, I would just have somebody on retainer. Or what I do a lot for folks is that I'll make little videos for them. So they'll send a question, and then they'll say, I can't get this button to go away. And so I will go in, but when I go do it, I'll record myself and I'll be talking to them while I'm doing it. And I say, well, when you want a button to go away, you click, you know, you have to hover here and you click this X here. So that way, the next time they can go back and watch that video, and that helps them not need me quite as much. Yeah. It's tricky. What platforms are folks using mainly? Anybody want to like, can we do a little hand raise? Like anyone using Square?
I'm Cordelia, and I have my GoDaddy website that I did myself, and I don't know how to add that Hotjar thing to it. And then I use SquareSite for my store, but it's all very inexpensively done. So obviously I'm not getting a lot of hits. So that would be something that the web designer would totally help me with, right? Getting more activity in the marketplace.
So that's part 2.
Yeah.
But we could totally talk about that right now, because I think you just expressed something that is in the beginning, I talked about the common trap of blaming your platform for not being good enough when really you haven't put much content on there. But another trap of part 2 is that folks feel like they didn't spend that much time on their website, and that's why no traffic is coming to it. So if you have Google Analytics, or even it could be the analytics set up in your platform, there are 2 numbers. There's going to be the traffic, the number of users that are coming to your website, and there's the bounce rate for individual pages. The bounce rate is out of 100 people that come to your website, how many people immediately leave? Like how many people spend less than, I think it's like 3 seconds. There's some number, you know, or less than on your site. So the number of people arriving on your website is not going to be, I mean, it's not a black and white thing, but mostly that doesn't have to do with how good your website is, because they haven't even seen your website when they click the link to it. So they don't know if it's good or not. But the bounce rate, that has everything to do with how good your website is. So let's imagine you have a homepage that's like, this is my business and it's amazing and this is why you should buy. call now to book an appointment, or book an appointment, you know, say you're a massage therapist or something. So, you know, before people, so the work of getting people to come to your site, that's all digital marketing land. So
Yeah.
sometimes it has to do with changing your website. For example, if you're working on your organic SEO, coming up on Google, you know, that a lot of that has to do with stuff that's actually on your website, but not exclusively. And organic, social, paid social, anything that goes out into the world and brings people back to your site, that's gonna up the number of users that come to the homepage. Now, once they're there, you have to give the good experience that we talked about in this workshop.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that will lead to the conversion of booking the massage. But so I guess, you know, in some ways we've done this in reverse, where part 2 is all about getting them to the site, and then
Right.
part 1 is all about what you do with them once they get there. But it is nice to start with your website, because that's the part that wants to be good before you promote it. You don't promote
Right.
before you have a good
Right. I
website.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always said, how do I get more people? But because most of the shoppers that I get are people that have come in my store and like my products and will come to my website just because they've met me. But I can't get new people because I don't have a good enough website, I guess.
Or because you're not promoting it online.
Yeah, I mean, I do a little bit on Facebook and Instagram. I've got pretty good, I think, Instagram content. I'm trying to blog once a week. Do you have a time frame for when you think blogs should be posted?
Once a week is a lot. Once a week is great. I think
Yeah.
you should keep doing that. Yeah, I think I usually don't say like how often they should be posted. I more say figure out what you can do consistently and then do that. If it's only once a month, then do it once a month, rather than weekly for half the year and then not at all for the rest of the year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just started because we had a webinar a couple weeks ago where the gentleman said blogging once a week is perfect.
Once a week is great. Yeah. I find people struggle to do that, but if you can do it, then that's great. I think if you're blogging once a week, it would be worthwhile to, if you did want to get some help from a professional, or, you know, if you wanted to do some research on your own, think about keywords, and that would help your blogging be more effective. And
You mean
know,
paying for keywords?
No, just figuring out what keywords. So this is going into the organic SEO. There's a lot of ways to rank on Google, and so, you know, there's just millions of words that people type into Google, and which ones, when they type them in, are actually like good fits for your business. So,
right.
You know what I mean? Like if someone types in, you know, timeshare in Florida and you come up, that's not useful to you at all. But if someone types, you know, gift shop would be a good, potentially gift shop or something, you probably want to come up for that.
Yeah.
And so keyword research will help to figure out not only like a list of what the keywords are that would be a good, that it really should lead to your site, but also how can that item, how difficult is it to rank for them, etc. So it might be really difficult to be the number 1 or be in the top 10 for gift shop in all of the US. You know, that's a pretty tall order. I'm sure that it's not really realistic to go for that. But something like, you know, something very specific, like a very specific product name, or, you know, gift shop in a location, that gets into local SEO, which is kind of a whole other thing. Local SEO being searches that include near me, or include the town name, or showing up in the map pack, which is, you know, when you go to Google Maps, you know, and you want to come up in that thing for people that are in your area.
Thank you.
I'm just going to pop on really quick. We're going to have to wrap this up in just a couple of minutes because we do have another call starting at 10. We kind of went back to back. I saw Andrea had a question. So Andrea, do you want to ask your question? And if we have time to answer it, or we can do follow-up tomorrow. I encourage everybody to jump on tomorrow or to watch the recording of tomorrow's call. If you can't jump on tomorrow, and I think we can do a lot of follow-up. I'm glad we're doing this twice. Andrea, what did you have? Unmute yourself, and we got to unmute first.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
We got you now. We can hear you now.
Julia, thank you. And I'm sorry I was late getting to the meeting today. And this might be repeating something you've talked about, but I do have a website for my business that I had done probably about 5 years ago. I basically wanted a website, not so much to do e-commerce, but to remind people who had been in the area that I'm here, or people coming into the area, if they were to look for a store, I would pop up in that sense. What recently happened is that Wilmington Works was nice enough to do a little pop-up store for different merchants here in town. And I had a great response from the little pop-up shop. So I think one of my questions is, I don't think I'm going to be the biggest or the best woman's boutique in all the world, but I do think people who have been to my store love it, and they would, follow me. I don't do the analytics. I have a friend who checks in and does that for me and lets me know what's happening. I have not changed my website in 5 years. There's one page that I offered just some of the store's favorite picks and that type of thing. And what I'm thinking is maybe if I convert that page over to what I would call a pop-up store. And then, so if I get people going to the web, then they can go to the pop-up part of it to see what's featured. Because with inventory being, I'm not buying a ton of inventory right now. So I'm not full range in a lot of sizes and this and that, but I wanted to do it on a little bit of more of a small scale. And I guess I'm asking how I manage the site through Wix. And I guess I'm just looking for some feedback for myself, but also for other people who are on this to say, I, had great sales from this crazy little pop-up shop this past week. And maybe we're missing a broader picture here of doing a web for the merchants downtown, doing something all together, or featuring, continuing to do something on that idea. Any thoughts? Thank you.
So thinking about having a website that kind of talks about everybody together, or maybe on the Wilmington Works website, there could be a page about the pop-up shop. That's not a bad idea at all. If you, again, little preview of tomorrow, but if you do have a page on the Wilmington Works website that talks a lot about the different businesses and has links to those businesses, that can help all of the businesses rank better locally. Although, of course, you're all in the same. I mean, I guess if all the competitors in a certain area are all getting the same link, it's going to raise everybody equally. But basically, you have not that that's a problem, but if you have a website that talks about Wilmington and it links to your site, that helps you to rank better for things in a local sphere.
That sounds like a good thing that maybe we could address as a group. I'm sorry to say it is after 10 and we do have to jump to get on this other call. So we have restaurants going on another call. We probably shouldn't have done them back to back, but we're just like so crazy busy. So I hope people can come back tomorrow, and I think we can answer a lot of these questions. I think you've raised a lot of really good things. So now our brains are spinning and we can really get into the nitty gritty of that, how do we get people to come to our website thing tomorrow. So I hope everybody can come back. And Karina is just sharing some information. She works with Lisa at Muse Arts in Brattleboro. I've actually worked with them before too. So that's a local designer who's good and responsive. And I think that just gives us a lot of things. And I think if you have questions, feel free to send them to me and to Julia. Or if if it's easier to email me, I'll send them to her and funnel them in so that we can address some more questions tomorrow. So I think we will see everybody again at 9 a.m. tomorrow if you can. If not, watch the recording because I'm sure we'll bring up a lot of questions. And do feel free to send questions to Julia directly. Her link is on the emails that we sent out inviting to this call, or you can send them to me and I'll get them to her. And we're wilmingtonworks@gmail.com. So thank you so much, everybody. We'll do this tomorrow. We'll do it again. Thanks. Bye-bye.
See you then. Thanks, everybody.